A team isn't really a team until they start trusting each other, or at least they don't start working like they're a team until they start trusting each other. Hey there, David Burkus here, organizational psychologist and author of 5 best-selling books on helping leaders and teams do their best work ever. Yep, including the new book, Best Team Ever, The Surprising Science of High-Performing Teams. And if you're watching a video on building trust on a team, I guarantee you we're gonna help you in this video, so stay tuned, but you're gonna wanna check out that book too, because we're gonna dive a lot deeper. Check it out, link in the video description. Teams don't really collaborate well. They don't start working like a team until they start trusting each other. Without trust, a team is really just sort of a group of individuals. With trust though, amazing things happen. According to researcher Paul Zak, people in high trust organizations and teams report 76% less stress. They report 106% more energy at work, and surprise, surprise, they report about 50% higher productivity. They even have 40% less burnout, and this one's crazy, 26% higher life satisfaction. In other words, the more they trust the people that they work with, the better their lives outside of work. Mind-blowing, right? Actually, it's perfectly logical, but it underscores the need to build trust on a team. So knowing that trust is key to team performance and to building a better life, there's still a lot of misconceptions about trust on a team. In fact, I'm contributing to that in the first opening of this video by using the T word trust instead of the more appropriate description for what we're looking for on a team, which is a sense of psychological safety. You see, trust isn't actually sufficient. What we want is a climate of mutual trust and respect, a climate where people feel that they belong and are included, and a climate where people feel like they can take interpersonal risks, like speaking up when they disagree, like sharing that crazy idea, like admitting they failed so that we all learned. That's what we want when we say we want trust. And to do that, it takes a little bit more than our traditional approaches to trust building. It doesn't require trust falls. It doesn't require taking personality tests or having these sort of, deep conversations about our differences. Those can help, except the trust fall thing. That probably doesn't help anyone. But those are insufficient without an understanding of what's really going on. And to build psychological safety on a team, you have to kick off a cycle that has 3 stages. That cycle looks like this: trust, risk, respect. And in this episode, we're gonna break down each of those stages and how you as a leader can take your team through them to kick off what is hopefully that virtuous cycle of building psychological safety. So the first stage in building a culture of trust on a team is trust, right? Is building that sense that I feel safe around these people. And what we know about those initial stages of trust is that people tend to trust people they like, people they know, people they have things in common with. So as a leader, the way you get started building trust is by having a conversation, not about differences, but about commonalities. Conversations about differences are great, and they're great for enhancing collaboration and enhancing sort of the collective intelligence of the team. But it's commonalities, or more specifically, what we sometimes call uncommon commonalities, that can really bond a team together fast. Uncommon commonalities are those things that individuals or maybe the whole team shares in common that's uncommon to that larger group they see themselves a part of. So it's the things we have in common that are uncommon to the rest of the organization, or maybe even the things we, as in 2 or 3 people, have in common that are uncommon to the rest of the team. Those uncommon commonalities are the beginnings of, well, they can be the beginnings of friendship on the team, but they're the beginnings of areas in conversation and areas in self-disclosure where we feel a little more comfortable with people. In other words, we trust people enough to take that second step, which is risk. We trust them enough to do that because we feel a connection to them. Now, as a leader, the way that you do this is actually not by forcing it, but by creating an environment that allows it to happen. By creating time for unstructured conversations. Maybe that's outside of work, maybe that's at breaks during work, maybe that's catering in lunch every once in a while, or maybe that's taking the whole team to a conference where those sort of after hours and networking hours can be spent actually communicating with each other, or even just traveling to the event can be spent communicating with each other about those non-work topics. You can't force it, you can't make people be friends on a team, but you can create an environment where it happens. You can create an environment where uncommon commonalities are most likely to be found, and that's actually in the unstructured moments that you have to structure into the team's workload. And when you do that, you'll start to build bonds enough to take us into the second stage in building a culture of trust on a team. The second stage of building a culture of trust on a team is risk. You gotta be vulnerable eventually, right? People have to feel like the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. And when I say risk-taking here, I mean sharing a failure and what you learned for it and trusting that the team's not gonna berate you or hold that against you. But it might be as simple as sharing an idea, sharing something that seems outside of the norm, speaking up when you disagree. The whole team is headed one way, but you have to trust 2 or 3 people enough to go, no, I don't think that's appropriate. I think we should probably go a different way. When people take those risks, that's the moment that determines whether or not it's a virtuous cycle or a vicious cycle, how we respond. And we'll talk about that as the 3rd stage, but for right now, we should probably say this. If you're in a leadership role, you take those risks first. You get vulnerable with your team first. Now, you don't have to share deal-breaking levels of vulnerability, right? You don't have to share like, I felt like my parents never loved me. I didn't have a date to junior prom. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about things that will make people uncomfortable. But sometimes as a leader, just saying, I don't know, or just saying, hey, what do you think? Or just admitting, the reason that I write such short emails is I'm terrible at grammar, right? Whatever you share in those small moments, those small little vulnerabilities communicates to the team that you trust them. That's why you're taking that risk. Now, that same researcher, Paul Zak, shows that amazing things happen when this is done well. When people leap out and be vulnerable and take that risk, especially when you do it as a leader, the team feels trusted, and that will be much more likely to affect that they'll head into this next and final stage in the cycle appropriately. The final stage in the process of building a culture of trust and psychological safety on a team is respect. This comes right from the basic definition of psychological safety, climate of mutual trust and respect. Now, respect has to do with how we respond to the risk. When someone admits that they failed, do we berate them? Do we make fun of them? Or do we help them pull those lessons from it and help the whole team extract how they're gonna move forward in a different path next time? When someone speaks up because they disagree, do we shut them down immediately, right? And just say, oh, they're just being negative, they're just being toxic, we can't handle that, right? When somebody shares a crazy idea, right? Do we just say, oh, we don't have the budget for that, etc.? Or do we help them feel heard? And as a leader, you model the way here. In that 2nd stage, you might have to step out and be vulnerable first, and I bet you your team is probably gonna respond appropriately, but what your team's gonna be watching for is that next risk. The next time someone steps out in vulnerability, how do you respond? Right? Do you hit the normal, don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions thing? No, coming to you with problems is a risk, and a risk that can build trust on the team. Do you immediately shoot down that idea, or do you help somebody think through the idea further so that even if we don't accept it, even if we decide it's not the best idea, they still feel heard? When somebody is sharing, are you actively listening to them? Or are you staring at your phone or your email inbox or the PowerPoint presentation that's running the team meeting you've run 52 times before, and so you know what the agenda is? How are you responding in that moment? Your team will be watching, and that person who took the risk will be watching. And if they feel respected, they will trust you more in the future. And more importantly, the people who are watching that exchange will trust you more in the future and will know how to respond when they see interpersonal risk-taking happening on the team as well. That's how the cycle works. Your choice. It can be a vicious cycle because people may have mistakenly trusted someone on the team, and then you sit by and do nothing while they're bullied after that risk, or you become the bully and as a result nobody trusts each other. Or you can create an environment where people find uncommon commonalities and build that sense of trust and connection. And then when they step out, you or someone else on the team demonstrates the respect that helps everybody feel more trusted. And then the next risk is bigger, and the next risk is bigger, and the learnings get bigger, the ideas get more diverse, the decisions get better. Why? Because at every stage in the cycle, you're building more of a culture of trust on the team. And this does operate sort of like a flywheel. As you start to build trust, risk, respect, it will be easier to build next time. But it's also pretty easy to make sure that flywheel comes right off of its axle the first time you hit disrespect instead. So yes, this is the cycle we use to build a culture of trust on the team, but it's one we have to consistently be aware of to keep that culture of trust on the team high. And when we do, like I said, we'll get better decisions, we'll get better ideas, we'll get higher levels of engagement, we'll get less stress. Why? Because we built a culture of trust, and that trust is enabling everyone on the team to feel like they belong and feel like they can do their best work ever. Oh, and one more thing. If somebody does take that risk and they're not met with respect, you may have to rebuild trust on a team. Maybe it's because of something you did, maybe it's because something a past leader did. Regardless, you're gonna wanna check out this video here on how to rebuild trust on a team.